Yes, the world is heading or is already in a very, very tumultuous situation, which conceivably could lead to a horrendous situation that historically most thought had been avoided at the height of the Soviet conflict with the Americans, and namely that is of a nuclear war. And it all goes back to the ending of the Soviet Union. After the end of the Soviet Union, uh, you had these ideas about the end of history and how America had won, and that everybody would then be like America as a capitalist entity. The point, though, was that once the Cold War ended, on the face of it, it made NATO a redundant institution, or was going to make it a redundant institution. If you have no enemy to fight, how do you justify your existence? And so it seems that part of American policy has been predicated on this idea of creating enemies and sustaining enmities. This is not a criticism of the United States per se. It's a criticism of American foreign policy as is dictated by what are termed the Wolfowitz Doctrine and the Brzezinski Doctrine. So in other words, NATO survived, as well as much of the American intelligence community, from being made redundant. And part of this survival mechanism, alongside feeding the what President Eisenhower referred to as the military-industrial complex, is this idea of war and conflict. It began in Yugoslavia and its breakup, and it was continued to the present through Iraq, to Libya, and now Syria. And it is a very dangerous situation because Russia has interests in Syria. It has a naval base there at Tartus, and it also has an interest in combating militant Islam through ISIS, al-Nusra, which threaten Russia in its borders, and it threatens China, and it threatens the whole world. So what is very, very disturbing is the fact that the United States has now developed a policy which is bent on militarism, because the Wolfowitz Doctrine is predicated on the notion that America must be a hegemon. It must dominate the world economically as well as militarily. And in doing so, America reserves the right to not abide by international treaties, multinational obligations. This is very specifically mentioned. And so when you put that into the context of Syria, you find that this recent ceasefire, just like you had several ceasefires in the Ukraine, were not observed merely because the United States fought against it. The United States sought to disrupt the Minsk Accord, did not give it a chance for success. And in the same way, this recent massacre of over 60 members of the Syrian army in the precincts of Aleppo was not accidental. If you scrutinize it, it makes particular sense from the American perspective that they are fighting a proxy war. Their goal is to overthrow the secular regime of Bashar al-Assad, and in his stead will be put a balkanized Syria consisting of separate states that are based on ethnic and religious nationalities. And so this whole idea of NATO and its role in the Middle East, in Syria, is patently been shown to be very counterproductive.